Well, for some reason, YouTube thinks I'm a big Joker Nole fan, and they keep recommending to me YouTube videos about Djokovic, even going as far to recommend a video to me about him on his ski vacation. I really don't want to see Joker on his ski vacation, but I do want to make my very first non-Federer tennis song a Djokovic song. Joker is he gote? Tennis fans don't agree. He's exciting and inviting debate on who is GOAT. He beats Roger, he beats Rafa. Head to head, we can see, but on paper, they look greater, because slams rule on this, we agree. He will slide, stretch, and glide on all surfaces. Will he arrive and decide who's the greatest of all time? Even if he does, Fed still is the best. There you go. Today on Coffee Break Tennis, we're so happy to be back. We talk about the actual GOAT debate. Yes, Novak Djokovic has reignited the GOAT debate, and Herr Peter Bodo at the ESPN has an interesting article on that. We'll talk about that. Also, Tsitsipas feeling the pressure of being one of the young gun top dogs now after his incredible semifinal run at the 2019 Australian Open. Now he's feeling a little bit of the pressure and having some bad results. We'll talk about that. Naomi Osaka has mysteriously fired her coach after winning 2 majors in a row. Fires the coach? We'll talk about that. And hey, there's probably some really exciting stuff in here that I forgot about in this stack of tennis newspaper. We'll get to all of it on today's episode of Coffee Break Tennis. Let's get into it. So, Herr Bodo, Peter Bodo from the ESPN.com wrote, Roger Federer isn't the GOAT, and neither is Rafa or Novak Djokovic. So Herr Bodo points out in this incredible article that Djokovic is brought back after his incredible, which I did get wrong. I'll just talk about that up front really quick. I said Rafa would win. The stats and numbers looked really good with his attacking style he had played, not dropping a set to the final. Big problem was he reverted back to a more defensive style, which is totally understandable when you are mentally, I don't want to say scared of your opponent. But there's no doubt, Rafa did it to Roger years ago. Roger found a way to break out, but we can't forget how many times Djokovic has completely dominated Rafa mentally. And we'll talk about that later. Let's get into this article. So Peter Bodo asks an interesting question, which, I disagree with, but it's still interesting. Is it really possible the 3 greatest players of all time are active right now? And I don't disagree with that. I think that is very possible. Sure, it's feasible, says Herr Bodo, but it's highly unlikely. This embarrassment of generational riches, Roger Federer owns 20, Nadal 17, 2 more than Djokovic, suggest our metrics for determining the GOAT are far too simplistic. So it's under attack now, this idea that most majors means you are greatest. Now, you might think this is a defense of Roger Federer saying, well, hey, if Djokovic passes 20, Roger's still the greatest. And I don't doubt many Federer fans will feel that way. It's going to be very interesting when all is said and done and all 3 of these big 3 guys are retired and we see the final numbers and people can start making a case for whether or not their favorite is actually the greatest of all time. But Herr Bodo here is saying that maybe we can't compare 2 greats of the game. Like a great example would be Rod Laver, because he wasn't allowed to compete at the majors for so many years of his prime, yet still managed to pull off the calendar year Grand Slam, all 4 majors in 1 year, twice, despite that. And there is a good case to be made for that, but again, there's nothing we can do about it. Roger Federer can't do anything about that. Novak can't do anything about that. Johnny Mack can't do anything about that. None of the greats of the game can, let's say Bjorn Borg, Verksen, and Mack, lots of greats of the game, Pete Sampras, Agassi, none of them can do anything about that. That's out of their control. All they can do is play against who they have in their time and win as many majors. Another interesting thing that Herr Bodo puts here is that no one really played the Australian Open like, say, John McEnroe. For a long stretch, McEnroe was, top dog, was so dominant in 1984, didn't play the Australian Open for most years of his career. Only towards the end of his career did he actually go play the Aussie Open. So at some point, I tried to highlight all the interesting stuff from this article. It prints out to several pages. Of course, we will not read all of it. But one of the things, here it is. So basically, by the time Pete Sampras emerged, and keep in mind, he points out here that no one thought anyone was going to pass Roy Emerson's 12, ever. So by the time Pete Sampras came here, it was no longer a 3-slam game. Oh, by the way, we got to point out, Roy Emerson did win half of his majors at the Australian Open. By the time Sampras emerged, it was no longer a 3-slam game. The opportunity to win a major every year increased by 25% because now all the top players are going to the Aussie Open. But just as important, and I say maybe more important if you're going to follow this argument, over time, the hard courts at the U.S. Open in Australia became medium to fast-paced, depending on the year, as we very well know, and the fast grass at Wimbledon was slowed down to hard court-like speed. The changes in equipment and court maintenance helped eliminate the dreaded clay court specialists who once terrorized all the seeds at the French Open. And then he quotes Paul Anaconda, former coach of Roger Federer, and Pete Sampras for that matter. One of the ingredients in the success of the Big Four, other than them being incredibly gifted, is that they don't have to adjust as much to different styles or surfaces. Back in the day, the discrepancy between surfaces opened opportunities and presented challenges. Now the only thing is movement, and even that's changing, Mr. Anaconda points out. This is just one of 4 pages, by the way. Even that is changing because we see the players sliding on the hard court, sliding on the grass, sliding on the clay. We're sliding all over the place. It's homogenized. I think that's a pretty good point to make, that there's so much less difference in we as Federer fans, the Fed head myself, dressed in Uniqlo from head to toe, actually just this Uniqlo sweatshirt today. We like to use this court homogenization argument as a way to point out that it's hurt Roger Federer and someone like Rafa and Djokovic, these guys who have such great defensive capabilities in their games, who can run forever, so flexible and stretchy like Nole. We pointed out to say, well, now that they've slowed down all the fast courts, Roger Federer doesn't get to use his greatest strength against his greatest opponents. So this is where things get really interesting for me. And you know what? Maybe we won't even read the next couple pages because this is really the main thing here. The speed at which these 3 titans eclipsed Sampras's record after Emerson's has stood for so long means a basic haul of major titles is just the entry fee into the GOAT debate. Other aspects of the record then become much more important, including head-to-head records, which would point at Djokovic's GOAT, success in other first-rate events like Masters 1000s, which would suggest Djokovic's GOAT, and overall winning percentage. All of this suggests there's no real GOAT. There's maybe a herd of them. And then he's got some stuff just showing, some stats showing Djokovic is better than everyone. Well, there's one more thing in here, but first let's talk about that. Is there a herd of GOATs? Please comment down below. And another thing to comment, what if, let's say, Djokovic finishes ahead of Roger and Rafa? Let's say Roger and Rafa are about the same. Roger maybe 1 ahead at the end, 2019, and Djokovic gets to 21. If you're a big Federer fan, comment below. Will you admit Novak Djokovic is the GOAT? I'm not 100% sure if I would say that. And this is why a part of me, deep down, I don't really want this, but I would be pretty amused to see Roger, Rafa, and Nole all finish with the same exact number. I just think that would be so funny. And of course, if that was the case, I would make the case that Roger Federer is the greatest. Even if Novak Djokovic passed Roger, I guess I would have to say he is GOAT, but I would offer with it a slight caveat. Now, look at this last thing in Herr Bodo's article here before we crumple this up and get moving on. He talks about Djokovic's head-to-head with Federer, but he says Djokovic seems to feel that he's neutralized the Federer threat. Whether or not Djokovic or anyone needs to equal Federer's Grand Slam title count to challenge for GOAT honors is open to debate. I don't think so. But this always evokes the question that Mats Wilander once asked, how can a guy be the greatest of all time if there was someone in his own time that he couldn't beat regularly? And that right there, that does it for me. That is the key to this whole thing. Roger is not in the same time. 5 years age difference between Joker and Nadal is 1 year older than Joker, and of course Roger is like 5 years older than Nadal, 6 years older than the Joker. If anything, Joker's got some splaining to do because he barely beat Roger in the head-to-head, despite, we got to point out, 5-6 years in tennis. That's almost like a whole career. That is a major generational change. So the key there was Wielander saying, how can you be the greatest if you can't beat someone from your own time? But honestly, Roger is the generation before Joker and Rafa. So I think he has a little bit of GOAT insurance. It all comes down to who wins the most. And I can't emphasize enough how much of a mental game tennis is. And if Joker does end up winning the most majors and gets ahead of Rafa and Roger, we'd have to point out that while his game might not be as beautiful to watch as Roger Federer's, the technique and just the style of play, we cannot deny that Joker might be the most mentally tough out of all three players. And if he passes Roger one day, I might make an argument that sounds something like Roger was better, but Djokovic mentally tougher. And we don't need any more evidence than look at the Wimbledon final 2014. Roger really should have won that, I feel like, against Novak. He had his chances for sure. And players say that all the time. And Joker just proved that he's so mentally tough in that match. Anyways, players always say when they lost, well, I had my chances. And I think if Djokovic ends up passing Roger, if that were to happen, and 5 majors is a lot. I don't care how good Djokovic looks. 5 is a lot. I'm not saying it's going to happen by any stretch. But if he did, I think Roger would have to say something along the lines of, well, I had my chances. Could have beat Djokovic in several major finals and stopped this a long time ago. Let's move on. All right, we are actually running out of time. I can't believe how long we've already been going. That is a big thing. Let me run through the rest of our stories really quick. And before I do that, let me just say a few things about the Australian Open final. All the things I said about how Rafa could win, I still think they could have been a factor, but they went out the window very early on in the match. Rafa kind of panicked. He went into the Australian Open knowing that he didn't have enough legs under him, not having played for like the last 5 months, to play a lot of long matches. And he successfully pulled off a very aggressive, play like your Roger Federer kind of style. A lot more attacking tennis, went for more on the serve, and he got through all of his opponents in straight sets. And I really believed that he would be so confident from playing that way for 6 matches that he'd be able to play attacking tennis against Joker. And as soon as Joker did a better job at attacking him early on, and he got Rafa out of position, Rafa couldn't set up and hit those attacking shots, Rafa pretty much abandoned it. And furthermore, worrisome for Rafa, if you Rafa fans want to see him do well on the faster surfaces, not clay, I think him and Carlos Moya are kind of disagreeing on how to approach these matches, because Rafa basically said his defense afterwards was, I didn't have the legs, essentially. I didn't have the level I needed, the fitness I needed to play the level to beat Joker. And yeah, to do another one of those 5-hour-long matches, Rafa didn't have it, but I don't think Rafa wins that against Djokovic, because Djokovic has a slight edge in the offensive firepower. He can play defense with Rafa all day, and he's more likely to be the one that steps up and hits a very offensive shot to take control of the point. That's why I thought Rafa had to play first strike tennis, kind of like Roger Federer, and I really thought he would see himself in a position where he didn't have the option to play more defensive because he didn't have the legs, and he would just attack, and he would somehow find a way to disrupt Djokovic. Of course, that didn't happen at all. It was one of the biggest beatdowns of all time in a major final. All right, we got a few minutes. Let's read through this really quick. I had some good stuff for Not Cool segment, and also for Hey Man, That's Pretty Funny, which I'm thinking about turning into more of a Hey Man, That's Pretty Cool, because there's a lot of cool stuff we could show, little things here and there, stuff I see on the Instagram. We'll do that next time. Let's run down through the rest of today's tennis news. Naomi Osaka ditched her coach after one wildly successful year, and no one knows why. This is from Laura Wagner over at Deadspin.com. It's a curious question, and it's wild speculation for the most part. Not from Laura Wagner, she points it out all over the place. We're so used to seeing tennis coaches get fired and hired, and goes back and forth all over the place. Everyone's worked with everyone, it seems like. But we don't see this too often. You win 2 majors in a row, and then you fire your coach. Very strange indeed. She points this out. Sloane Stephens and Kamal Murray ended it in December. Angelique Kerber ditched her coach, Wim Fissette. Simone Halep and Darren Cahill, of course. Dominic Thiem had 2 coaches, Gunter and Gallo. And Gallo, he actually quit to go work for Davis Cup. But she goes on to say, according to speculative, like I said, pure speculation. Report from Japanese outlet Nikon Sports. There may have been tension between the two during the Australian Open, saying Osaka practiced without Sasha a few times. The Guardian, meanwhile, says that Osaka could have suffered an early dose of celebrity virus. That's total speculation. Other rumors swirling around like PEDs, conspiracies involving Serena. Of course, Sasha was the Serena hitting partner before. Maybe Osaka just likes to switch things up and avoid complacency. Maybe not. And then she does what I'm about to do. If you know something about it, send me an email, basically, is what she's saying, Laura Wagner. I'm saying, comment down below if you know anything inside scoop about Sasha and Osaka. Tsitsipas just lost first round in Rotterdam to Zoomer. Got to be incredibly disappointing for him. And look at this. This is embarrassing. This was just recently. What time we got? Oh, gosh, let's rush. Tsitsipas lost at Gael Monfils. Now, one thing I didn't print was Fabio Fognini saying that he kind of suggested that these next-gen players are a little bit arrogant. Maybe he's talking about Sasha Zverev, not the other Sasha, the hitting partner for the WTA. I'm not sure who he's talking about. Tsitsipas seems like a pretty friendly guy from some of the stuff I've seen. He puts himself out there. He's got his own YouTube channel. But Fabio did say, these guys kind of think too much of themselves already. They already think they're big stars. They're not as respectful as Fabio Fognini would like. Fabio Fognini, Mr. Respect himself. Now, Tsitsipas, before he lost to Monfils before Rotterdam, was it last week, the week before? He did win one match. I can't remember against who, but so at least he got a win after the Australian Open success. But when he lost to Monfils, I couldn't help but think, kind of felt it when I watched that match. Monfils comes here thinking, Tsitsipas is a higher seed than me at this tournament. He's the favorite, really? And Monfils really dug in and played one of the better matches we've seen. Tsitsipas wasn't playing bad, so I don't want to say I no longer believe in Tsitsipas. I still think he could be the future of the sport, but there's no denying this is going to be a hard time, and it looks it's going to be harder on him. How can you not cringe when you think about this interview, Stefanos? Tsitsipas wants more moments in tournaments like the Australian Open, where he defeated Roger Federer. Tsitsipas said, I really want to beat badly Djokovic, Nadal, Federer, Marin, whoever else in the future, whoever on top, basically. Because as I said previously, these players will make me a better player. Tsitsipas is 12 in the rankings. So, that sounds a little bit, and I'm not saying Tsitsipas is Nick Kyrgios, but that is a little bit like the stuff we hear from Nick Kyrgios, where, he's motivated to play the best players. Of course, that's a part of the sport. There's nothing wrong with that. But a little danger sign there. Tsitsipas better make sure he doesn't do a Nick Kyrgios and take the time to beat the guys like Zoomer in Rotterdam. Speaking of Rotterdam, Roger Federer won Rotterdam last year. He's not playing it this year. His ranking has already dropped. It will probably drop again since he won Little Rotterdam last year. It's from tennis.com, Kamakshi Tandon. Federer was doing some press for the next Labour Cup in die Schweiz. He says, if my ranking goes down, it's not a problem. The idea for me is to be good in health, to know that I can win tournaments, to know that I can beat them, meaning he can beat Joker, he can beat Rafa. It's been like this forever, and one thing Kamakshi Tandon left out of here was that Roger said in that same interview, I believe, that when he won the Australian Open in 2017, he was ranked number 17, and he'd much rather win majors and be ranked anything. He doesn't care what the ranking is. If he can win majors, he can beat his rivals. The ranking means nothing. Obviously, clinching number one as an old senior tennis player last year was a big deal, and that's why he went to Rotterdam. That's why he's not even going this time. And finally, before we get out of here, I just saw this, and it made me think about this transition period we're about to enter in tennis, since we're talking about who is GOAT today. All three of these big three GOATs, the herd of GOATs, as Herr Bodo would say, they will be gone. It will happen. In the future of tennis, we need someone like a Tsitsipas to be incredible, not to be like Grigor Dimitrov, who could still maybe do something. Report, CAA, I don't know who it is, but this is just a bad report. CAA Talent Agency shuts down entire tennis division. Also from tennis.com, Kamakshi Tandon. What really jumped out to me was this. There was not this is from CAA Talent Agency. There was not a sufficient opportunity for us in the representation, hit the music, we're getting out of here soon, of tennis players, and as such, we made a strategic decision to exit the business. Listen to that. Not sufficient opportunity for us in the representation of tennis players. Who did they have in their stable of stallions? Marin Cilic, Taylor Fritz, Eugene Bouchard, Coco Van de Weeg, And they used to have names like Novak, Andy Murray, Raonic. Those names maybe were making them some money. Basically, they can't make money on the sport of tennis. And even though the players they have right now aren't the biggest stars, they're betting against tennis. They're getting out of tennis. We might see more stuff like this in the future because basically, if you don't represent Roger, Rafa, Joker, there's really not a whole lot of money to be made. Finally, it is also said former CAA agent now representing Cilic, Fritz, and Ryan Harrison. That makes more sense to me. One person can make a living representing multiple tennis players who aren't Roger, Rafa, Joker, but not a whole division at a big talent agency. Thanks for watching Coffee Break Tennis. I will be running an awesome tennis clinic with tennis teaching guru and genius Peter Freeman in Florida. So we'll do our best to get a video out next week. Not sure if we will, but after next week, whether or not we have a video, we will be back to the normal Monday, Thursday schedule. See ya!